Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Experience Kills. I have the lovely Ben with me today.
Hello, Rob.
Hello. So we are talking about a wonderful strategy game called Warhammer 40,000 Battlesector. Now, when you got the code for this, I was definitely the right person to call. I've been playing Warhammer for about, I think it's 2003. So at time of recording, I've been playing for about 17, 18 years. So
okay.
I haven't been playing games the whole time, but I've been interested in the world and following Games Workshop's franchises for a very, very long time. So I was definitely the right person for this review. So Battlesector itself is developed by Black Lab Games and published by Slytherin. Now, as I understand it, you have a very, very happy feeling about these people, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it came with a heavy heart, me passing this over to you, because I knew you were super into your Warhammer, so I thought, right, Rob needs to cover this. However, Black Lab Games and Slytherin made one of my all-time favourite PC games of the last few years. It came out in 2017. Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, which is a hugely underrated, incredibly faithful to the sort of spirit of the modern TV series video game adaptation of Battlestar Galactica, and it's a brilliant strategy game. So knowing that, I figured this is probably going to be really, really good as well.
I mean, the short answer is yes. That's it, review done. No. It is a really, really top quality strategy game. So a bit about the gameplay. So there's no base build or anything like that. It's not like Dawn of War, one of the other very famous 40k RTS games. You control squads of Space Marines from the Blood Angels chapter, and you are dealing with the Tyranids, which are essentially alien biomass wanting to consume everything. That's the short version of them. You're trying to accomplish various objectives on the different maps. They're connected by an overarching story. Won't go into too many story details, purely because, spoilers. I'm not going to do a thing where I give a spoiler warning afterwards this time.
Very good.
I'm learning. And yes, you have different types of units. So you've got your bog standard like Space Marines who just have bolt guns. You have some heavier armed units as well. You have some HQ units, assault marines with jetpacks, all very faithful to the tabletop, which is what I like most about this game. It's basically the tabletop, but on your PC. The maps that you walk around are split into square grids. This is all kind of an overlay, so you've got natural terrain, natural rocks, outcroppings, elevations with ramps that are actual ramps, not just weird steps or anything like that. But it's all spread out with these squares on top that track how far your different squads can move with their movement points, their range for their ranged attacks. Different range attacks will have different effective ranges as well. So one of the heavier units, I forget their exact naming convention, they have big chain pistols that they end up shooting at closer quarters. But one of their powers, essentially, is that they can launch some explosives out of their backpacks. But that's only effective at a certain range. And the map will highlight on these squares, it'll highlight where that effective range is. So it's nice knowing when the Tyranids, when these little alien monsters, are in the right place for you to use those. And then they have a cooldown over the amount of different turns. So it's like a 2 or 3 turn cooldown before you can use that ability again. So it's really nice how they've incorporated that strategic element, but they haven't overdone it. The world is still natural, post-apocalyptic, grim, dark fantasy world, etc., but it is still a natural world that you're moving your squad around with. All of that's just laid on top, like a bit of tracing paper on top of a drawing.
That sounds like a really faithful translation of the real game's mechanics. Now, so in relation to that, it sounds like have they translated the dice rolls into action points? Is that fair? Movement points, or are there dice rolls as well?
There are not really dice rolls. There's an element to when you're shooting a target some of your shots may miss, some of your shots may interact with cover and that sort of thing. So there's an element of dice roll, but
like
there's
XCOM
no
style.
Kind of, yeah, like XCOM, but actually percentage based and not bend you over based. Because XCOM was always, you have a 99% chance of hitting, you get that 1% every time.
The meme of the guy stood next to the enemy with a rifle in his face, and it's like 100% he still misses.
Exactly.
That.
They don't do this. All the different entities in a unit, so you've got your 5 tactical marines shooting 8 Hormagaunts, which are a type of Tyrannid unit. Each different Hormagaunt in the target unit has a health bar, and you can see the numbers chipping away at the different health bars depending on which ones they hit. So you can see the numbers fall off, which is really, really nice, as the different models just then keel over and explode and all that sort of thing. But there's no visual dice roll. There's no sort of actual mechanic where you are rolling some dice into a pot digitally or anything like that. It's all strategy, and then positioning takes more of an important stance, that sort of thing.
I think that sounds like a brilliant way of adapting it, because it seems more approachable to say a person that's not playing it, but also very faithful at the same time. So I think it's like the best of both worlds. It's because I've always been drawn to the Warhammer universe, but more the lore and less the actual playing of the game, because I always found that quite off-putting, because I always struggled when I was a kid, when I was really looking at it, of getting my head around the actual mechanics of how to play it. So yeah, there was back then as well, when I was a kid, and it was a relatively new thing, the gatekeeping was a real thing on getting into Warhammer. It was crazy. It was so off-putting walking into a Games Workshop. But now, the fact that there's basically a PC game for Warhammer out every week, that it's never been...
You're not wrong.
More, and what blows me away is that the standard of them are so good. For so many of them, right? That there's not the stinkers of 10 years ago. There's a huge slew of variety, but yet they're all so goddamn good. I kind of want to play them all. But this one, I really am very interested in this one. So talking about lore, what I want to touch on is, you mentioned right at the beginning, you said the Space Marines you're playing as are the Blood Angel chapter. That was right?
Yes.
So is there a significance? I've always been a bit confused. There's lots of different chapters, and in marketing materials around the games, they often stress which chapter is involved. Now, is there a reason, and does it matter that this is the Blood Angels, and does that actually have ramifications to, I don't know if it's the gameplay, but the story, or what?
They do link some of the Blood Angels backstory into the game. There are certain units that are unique to the Blood Angels. Right. For example, sanguinary priests, I think that's how you say it, or sanguine priests, that have sort of a cleric-based sort of role, as well as being combat-focused. With the Blood Angels specifically, though, they have, in the lore backstory, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent and try and keep it somewhat time-sensitive. They have a reasonably tragic backstory. They are afflicted by something called the Red Thirst, where they want to drink their opponent's blood. It ends up being significantly more complicated than that, and they then can succumb to the Black Rage when they get inducted into the Death Company realm of the Blood Angels, because they essentially relive the horrors that their Primarch, Sanguinius, went through during the Horus Heresy, because he essentially fell just before the Emperor fell to Horus. I might have to do a Warhammer lore video at some point at this rate, to explain more about what that means, but any fans will know those sorts of events.
I mean, it sounded awesome. I didn't really understand any of it, but it sounded cool. There's no doubt. I mean, that's why I've always loved the Warhammer universe, 40k specifically, because of that grim, dark, basically sort of weirdly extracted sort of Roman Empire concept that's then twisted and played out across this huge galactic landscape, and all of that sounded so cool. I really want to now find out about that. I'm more interested than ever. So I had no idea there was basically a vampire Space Marine chapter. No idea.
And these are the good guys. Just going to point that out. These are the good guys.
Love it.
The way this manifests in gameplay terms is that when you deal damage or kill enemies, you gain momentum. and if you stay stationary, you lose momentum. So there's that kind of balance of wanting to advance and shoot and engage, but you want to be careful of the game's vicious difficulty curve, because the squads, at least to start with, have permadeath. You get to the point where you can recruit more from your recruiting pool later as you go through the different story missions. That's fine. But when you start out, the difficulty curve is very high, and if you lose things and lose squads, they don't carry over, you don't get refreshed. So it's that balance between wanting to keep your momentum up, keep going, and gain access to small power-ups and bonuses for filling that bar and for filling that number, but also not being too reckless to lose your Marines, because if you do, you get into a position where I was quite early on, where I had to replay a bunch of missions because I was a little bit too reckless. So it can be quite tricky. You do meet some Sisters of Battle as you move through the game as well. They're another good faction. They are essentially the ecclesiarchy, the church of the Space Marines. They are all female. They have, as far as I understand it, some masochistic tendencies. The more they get hurt, the more power they get. There is a skirmish function to this game as well, which is very well put together, where you can command huge armies, but you also have the option of commanding the Tyranids. So I did a skirmish match, and I had all these Bio-Titans for the Tyranids, and it was so much fun. Sort of taking on the Space Marines, because the AI is reasonably competent as well when it comes to skirmish mode, because often skirmish modes can just be more on AIs, but the skirmish mode AI in this is really, really good. I did wipe the floor with them, but I had lots of Bio-Titans, lots of huge monsters, so it's a really well put together game. I highly recommend any fan of 40k who is starved for a little bit of tabletop action picks this game up, because they will highly enjoy it. If you've enjoyed anything by Slytherin or Black Lab before, pick this up because you will love it.
One final question. I know you did still a wrap up, so I'm annoying in this way. But I was wondering, is there any significance to the name Battlesector? Is that a thing? Is it something a fan would know about? I'm just curious as to what the relevance is.
As far as I understand it, it's a sector of space they're battling through.
Brilliant. Cool.
That's as far as I understand the significance of Battlesector.
So it's just like, right, we need a subtitle. Okay, we need something. Anything? What have we got? Well, we're in this place. We could call it a sector. We're battling. How about that? Battlesector. Perfect.
Kind of, yeah.
Ship it. But it's like, yeah, no, obviously their previous game that I love, Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, doesn't have the most amount of significance I've ever come across after playing that game extensively. But you talk about the difficulty spike. That game is also very much of the same ilk. That they don't hold your hands, these guys, and it's like the decisions you make. Often, if you make poor decisions, you are going to regret them, and they will be exploited by the enemy. I like that though in a strategy game. I like having to really think about and understand my units and understand their abilities and understand their movement and what they can do and really micromanage everything. And I really want to play this. I really, really, really want to play this. So
highly worth it. Highly worth it in my opinion. Yeah. That's been another episode of Experience Kills. Thank you so much for listening to us and watching the video today. If you have watched us on YouTube, you can like and subscribe to our channel. We are always very grateful for that. We do our weekendly podcast, our weekly podcast, every Saturday or Sunday. You can listen to that as well. This will be put out as podcast form as well. If you do find a place online where we aren't, let us know, and Ben has promised to sort that out. I'm determined to find somewhere we're not through this one day.
It's my Blood Angel pledge that I will do that.
Okay, I'm liking the dedication here. We do have a Twitch account as well. Do follow us. We stream occasionally. You can find that on Twitch at Experience Kills. You can find me on Twitter at Homeless Mr. Gibbs. You can find Ben at DIYE, and you can find all of us, myself, Ben, Richard, even Cam still, and Leah as well. You can find us all at Experience Kills collectively there. But yeah, thank you very much, and hope to speak to you soon.
Fight on, man. Fight on. Yeah.